The Vikings are going across the pond 2 weeks in a row. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. My hashtag everydayers. I appreciate you all so very much. The schedule releases today, but we already have a little bit that we know about it. So this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Today on the show, first things first, let's talk about the news. The Vikings are, according to several reports and then later confirmed by the NFL itself, going across the pond twice. Well, not two separate trips. The Vikings are going to play two international games this year. Week 4, they will travel to Dublin and play at Droke Stadium against the Steelers. And then week 5, they will play at Tottenham against the Browns. They played at Tottenham before. They've actually played the Browns before. It was at Wembley. You might remember that one, 2017. That was an 0-16 year for the Browns. Hopefully this one goes a little better for them. Not hopefully. Screw the Browns. I don't like them. I would love to see them go 0-17 again. Everybody involved in that organization should be canned. For more thoughts on AFC North teams, go listen to Locked On NFL today. The international push from the NFL has been growing and growing and growing, of course. And last year was the first time a team did do a 2-game stint abroad. It was the Jacksonville Jaguars. They played 2 games in London. They must have liked it because the Vikings are doing it again. Like it must have been a positive experience. And there are a few implications to this. And then tomorrow we'll go break down the whole schedule. By the way, tomorrow you're going to want to be live with me when the schedule comes out. Once the whole schedule is released, I am going to do a live show breaking everything down. And you're going to want to be on YouTube for that. So, sources say I got a little something planned. Anyways, the draw of these international games, of course, you're getting a bigger audience and all that stuff. But obviously, there's this huge burden on the organization. The travel, the change in time zones, the burden on the players, not to mention the logistical burden, getting the right equipment out there. Like one thing that might happen, and you might remember some issues with like footing in London last year when the Vikings played there against the Jets. And one of the things about that is like, you're bringing a lot of stuff all the way across. You might not bring 2 or 3 different cleat options for all 48 active players on that plane. And especially for 2 games, you probably need to bring all 53 because who knows who's getting hurt, right? And maybe some practice. Like everybody's not bringing 3 pairs of shoes. It's an international trip, and it like that becomes a real like shipping expense. So that kind of stuff can be really difficult. Here's my take on this. I was asked on Locked On NFL. We actually talked about it a little bit. Like, well, did the NFL screw the Vikings? And I think that's a weird take on it. Tyler was the only place where I heard that. But if anybody else is thinking that, my idea is that the Vikings are almost certainly enthusiastic participants here. I don't think they're getting saddled with this. I think they love it. As an organization, they love it. As a business, they love it because they have been trying to get into that London market since 2013 when they first went abroad. But it's been a concerted effort. And with the Kevin O'Connell version of the Vikings, the Kwesi Kevin O'Connell version of the Vikings, they have been abroad all 2 out of the 3 years, and this will be 3 out of 4 years now. So this is a natural evolution of that, but there are a couple of the disadvantages are obvious, right? Like international travel is difficult, but the Steelers and Browns are also dealing with that challenge. And so call it an equalizer, like the weather is, right? Everybody's dealing with a challenge, and if one team deals with it differently, it'll impact the game. But there's a couple things that work really well in the Vikings' favor here. One, both of these were scheduled road games. And O'Connell actually compared it to, for me, it's just, oh, cool, you're not losing home games, right? But O'Connell even took it a step further when he talked about it on when he talked about this news, I think it was on the Rich Eisen show, that like Heinz Field is a tough place to play, and so is the Dog Pound. Even if the Browns are good or not at a given time, like that crowd gets into it, and those are two very hostile environments for a young quarterback to have to go deal with early in his first season starting that are now more neutral, maybe even Vikings favored environments. I would be pretty surprised if if Vikings fans outnumbered Steelers fans. Steelers fans, like, very famously are the best traveling fan base probably in the league, like, forever. Like, their terrible towels are everywhere. But I think the game in Tottenham, I guess it depends on how the Brown season is going, but if the Brown season goes poorly, like it looks like it's going to start poorly, you might not see a lot of enthusiasm there, and it might be a little bit more of a purple audience. When I was in the stands in London in 2022 against the Saints, that was about 50-50. And I mean, I've been to a lot of Vikings road games, and so from my own anecdotal experience, it ebbs and flows kind of depending on how exciting the other team is, right? It's like it feels pretty lonely in like Lambeau Field in week 2 of 2018 when they've got Aaron Rodgers and Super Bowl aspirations. Not so much when you're going to Jacksonville last year. That was a pretty purple place. But either way, if there can be just enough Vikings noise to sort of take the edge off of it, that can be a big thing. But also, it's just like these were road trips anyways, and the Vikings preserve all 8 of their home games, which we'll find out what they are. You might even be finding out what they are while you listen to this show, in which case, please go to the live stream and finish this one later. The other advantage is that with a full 2 weeks in the UK, that second game, the Vikings will just be more adjusted than the Browns, and that should serve as some kind of an advantage. And then they can get home and do their bye after that, so they can readjust. I think from like a sleep angle, that's much easier than what they did a couple years ago, where they played against the Saints and then came home and didn't even have a bye. They played the Bears the very next day. That is a little bit more difficult. They did win that game, but that's more difficult, right? So they might have like a genuine advantage against the Browns there. And I think if anybody's getting screwed here, it's Cleveland. Because Cleveland, they say, yeah, we'll take our Vikings game abroad, and the NFL comes back and tells them, all right, cool, they're going to already have been there a week. Good luck. That kind of sucks. But it's Cleveland, and they deserve that. It is kind of funny that J.J. McCarthy is the most certain thing at quarterback that we will be seeing in any of those games, because Aaron Rodgers isn't still technically a Steeler yet, although I think that's been a done deal for some time if I'm reading those tea leaves right. And then with Cleveland, who knows who the quarterback's going to be? It could be Kirk Cousins. Like, it could be a guy not even on the roster. Kind of funny, but we'll go through the rest of the schedule. There's been some other rumors about like what game is what. I don't really play the game of piecing together, like which rumor came from which, somebody tweeted, source tells me, whatever. Everybody else can play that game. I think it's really funny to go through it like Nancy Drew the whole schedule, just for it to be announced by the league officially like 3 hours after you finish that. Like, I just watch Andor. Okay, just catch up on Andor tomorrow, and then by the time you're done, the schedule will be out. Or today, and then by the time you're done, the schedule will be out. But all in all, this is the Vikings bringing themselves to the forefront of the league's international movement. I know from my experience on this show that there are Vikings fans everywhere. During the draft streams, at least most recently, but I have seen, I've got like Skull from Brazil or something like that is a common question asker. I got people from the UK, people from Denmark, people from Australia, people from Japan and Singapore. So I don't know, sound off. Okay. If you're watching on YouTube and you want to leave a comment, or you just want to like shoot me an email at lockedonvikingspodcast@gmail.com or something from where you're at, I always get a kick out of hearing that there are people all over the world listening to Locked On Vikings. I think that's the coolest thing in the world. So thank you all. Hashtag everydayers from wherever you are, and may the Vikings come to your neck of the woods someday. There's not much else to say about this. It's cool that they're going international twice. I think I'm gonna try to get to both of them, so I might be crossing the pond myself. We'll see if everything works out the way I want it to there. That can never be guaranteed till it's booked, right? But I am excited for it. And I think it works out for some ways in the Vikings, doesn't work out for some ways in the Vikings, and ultimately these games will come down to who plays better football, which it always does. So instead of droning on about this for 20 more minutes, let's continue with the Everyman series and talk about an offensive lineman with ties to the FBI. That's next on Locked On Vikings. This episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and boy, a lot of interesting stuff is happening. Wolves up 3-1, Awu et al. And if you think you know what's going to happen in Game 5, no Steph Curry, why don't you put $5 on it? If you win, you get $200 in bonus bets, whether it's a money line, a spread, an alt line, Anthony Edwards 3-pointer thing, Naz Reid fourth quarter 3-pointers. That feels like it's sort of a lock all the time. And you could even wait till the end of the third quarter and then put it down in like a live same game parlay with like Wolves winning or something like that. Whatever it is, put down $5, you get $200 if that bet wins. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. We've spent a lot of this offseason talking about the truth and how it gets obscured in like the fountains of information that we have access to. A lot of this was like, the Aaron Rodgers thing, or last year the Justin Jefferson thing. And it's frustrating when one side is saying one thing, one side saying another thing, and we don't get to know what is or isn't true. So we have to like sort of ride the line, or we have to say, well, I don't know, maybe, and we have to kind of just like wait it all. It's super frustrating. This is particularly front of mind because I just watched the end of Andor, and there's a speech in that show about like the death of truth and all that. So it's like super front of mind. And so it was really interesting to think about being a kid and watching the news and watching one channel say one thing about some international crisis or some going on, and then a different channel says something totally different, and not being able to know the truth. This is something that I think we've all been frustrated by, whether it's the low stakes world of sports or the much higher stakes worlds elsewhere. Something we've all been frustrated by, right? What is actually happening? Can someone just tell me who's lying to me, who isn't? What if you had in your home the person who knew, like the person who was there, who was part of it, who could tell you that answer, but then wouldn't? This is the experience of Justin School. Whenever the news would be on, something is going on. Justin's father, Joshua, was an FBI counterterrorism specialist. He was the counterterrorism section chief for a large portion of a 20-year career in the FBI. This interaction would happen sometimes. You would watch the news and they would be like, hey, Dad, what is actually happening? They said something else. And he would be like, I can't tell you. So they would just stop watching the news together. This FBI thing, this involvement in world affairs, in things that are bigger than one family in Clifton, Virginia, colored everything. In 5th grade, when Justin School was in 5th grade, his dad had to go to Iraq for 4 months for reasons he never learned about. And that's kind of a terrifying thing when you're 10 years old and you're old enough to know that like something bad could happen, but you're not really old enough to like be able to deal with it and like know how your emotions work. So it was this kind of constant reminder that the world is bigger than him. Justin School has no interest in doing anything different after his life or anything like that in his life after football. He ended up going the sports route, and he has had a fairly long NFL career. He went to Vanderbilt. He was offered, he actually could have gone military. He actually had an offer from Navy and instead chose Vanderbilt. He had an offer from a couple of other kind of lower tier schools, like Rutgers kind of tier schools. But he didn't want to do this. He saw the world of, election hacking, terrorist plots, foreign affairs, and all this stuff that his dad had to deal with and be stressed about, and was like, no thanks. I'll focus on my football. This turned out to be a good decision to go to, an SEC school instead of Navy, because it got him drafted in the 6th round. He ends up going to the San Francisco 49ers in the 2019 NFL draft, drafted right around the Oli Udoh range of that draft, if I recall. They were pretty close to each other. His time in San Francisco heated up pretty quick. I mean, he was, an Oli Udoh, a Blake Brandel, right? Like he was, okay, welcome in. You're going to be depth. They looked at him the way we looked at like Walter Rouse last year. We expect nothing from you. Develop. Good luck. And hopefully you're a swing tackle later. And the whole point of Justin School, his whole career has been to be a Rashad Hill for someone, to be a swing backup, ready for duty when I need you kind of guy. That duty came up pretty quick with Joe Staley going down in that 2019 49ers season. Justin School had to end up playing most of the year at tackle as a rookie. Call it an up and down season, but that 2019 49ers season went pretty well. They eliminated the Vikings, if you recall, and made it all the way to the Super Bowl. Which is funny, when you look up things that people have written about Justin School, so much of it will be colored by that. Whenever somebody plays in a Super Bowl, the high school, the college are all like, hey, look, a Vanderbilt Commodore was in the Super Bowl. And that's the article. Or, it's Centerville alum, Centerville High School in Clifton, Virginia. After the 49ers will lose that Super Bowl, they go into the 2020 season. If you recall, the 2020 season kind of goes belly up for the 49ers. But among that is a whole bunch of injuries to like Trent Williams and people being in and out. Justin School's all over the line and has to go in and out for like spot duty again. From there, he is preparing in 2021 to maybe take the leap and take another part of that role. And we might remember as Vikings fans tracking that like pretty well in 2020 because there was like a contract dispute and stuff. He'll end up returning to the 49ers. But he'll be hurt a whole bunch in that 2020 season. And Justin School will have to come in, not to mention, relief for everybody's switching around everywhere that whole season because that was like the COVID year, right? But Justin School will play a little bit in 2020 as well. But he's sort of settling into this role as like the Rashad Hill of the 49ers, the swing backup guy. There is a rookie on the team, Colton McKivitz, that's starting to kind of push him for that. And then in 2021, they draft another rookie in Jalen Moore that is pushing him for that. And suddenly his roster spot is getting a little bit crowded. It's becoming a little bit harder to make the team. And when it rains, it pours. And a little bit goes wrong, and then a lot of it goes wrong for Justin School. That'll be next on Locked On Vikings. You might think of the 49ers as kind of injury cursed. You're not wrong. They've had a lot of really high profile banged up years. They're kind of always, they don't really have their whole, right? Debo's always hurt, and I know he's commander now, but like he was always hurt. Kittle was in and out. They had McCaffrey. All of that came after one of the craziest summers that a team has ever had. School entered that year very much in the same place on the roster that he is in now, where he is sort of expected to be or at least compete with someone young for that backup swing tackle Rashad Hill type of role. But the focus in 2021 in San Francisco was A, that 2020 had been, crazy injury year. Let's try to be healthier. But B, we've got this new QB in Trey Lance, and everybody's paying attention to him. Quickly, the spotlight is taken away from him as Tarvarius Moore tears his Achilles and Justin School tears his ACL during the same voluntary offseason program. It's the voluntary part. This was not mandatory OTAs. This was the voluntary part. The voluntary part or mandatory minicamp, I mean. The voluntary part that happens in June is the stuff that, like, you remember when Justin Jefferson wouldn't show up and all the coaches would be like, yeah, that's fine. It's voluntary, but it would have to, like, that part. And it sort of reminds you why players in a contract negotiation don't show up to that. Because even in, individual drills, it was a pass pro drill that Justin School tore his ACL on. It was, and Tarvarius Moore tore his Achilles in a non-contact way. So non-contact or light contact, which is all that's allowed at these things, you can still step funny and blow your ligament, and then your entire career gets turned upside down. That's what happens to Justin School here. While he has a little bit of momentum being a flexible sort of depth lineman, 6th round pick, that's an honest living in the NFL. And being able to play tackle, move inside to guard, and having a bunch of experience doing that was going to be his leg up in this competition against all of these, lower tier other day 3 picks that had joined things. Sean Coleman is another name that he was supposed to compete with. He won't get to experience that at all. After he tears his ACL, he will miss the entire 2021 season. It's a big rehab effort to come back and try to regain his spot on the roster in 2022. But that San Francisco roster will only get more pressure on it in the 2022 season. And Trent Williams just will not leave. He will not retire, right? He's still there, kind of taking up space on that roster that you were supposed to kind of think, okay, the old guy's maybe going to leave soon, but it's a little bit of a Harrison Smith situation where the guy just refuses to die and still plays at a high level too. So in 2022, Justin School, coming off of this ACL injury, will not make the team. 49ers have their tackle group and they say thanks, but no thanks, and they waive him. He'll get picked up on the Buccaneers, but only on the practice squad, and he'll sort of have to live that practice squad life for a year, getting in a little bit of spot duty here and there, and then he'll actually make the team in 2023 as the tackle depth sort of atrophies in Tampa Bay. But by this point, the die of his career is cast. The thing that Justin School has never really had is a way to actually compete for a starting role. But he's lost out on backup roles too, so I don't know if that's actually a point worth making at all. But it's very much one of those careers where he had this kind of growing, budding development arc, and then an ACL injury totally throws it out, because it not only costs you 2021, it costs you your job in 2022, and now you're on a practice squad, and now you're just scrambling to make a backup job. And he does get a backup job, and he's now spent many years in this league as a backup tackle, which is why the Vikings were interested in him when he does hit free agency and finds himself open for business in the 2025 offseason. And that's exactly what the Vikings were looking for. So we'll just go pick up that guy that's a regular backup. But it's one of those tragic things where the league is deeply, deeply unfair to you, and it doesn't really care. It's nobody's fault that you tear your ACL, right? But it costs 2 or 3 years of your ability to develop as a tackle. And suddenly you're sitting in the same spot in the 7th year of your career that you were in the 2nd year of your career. And that's not to say that Justin School's roster spot is at all guaranteed. He probably has the fast track to it, right? But if Walter Rouse plays great and some undrafted, Logan Brown plays great or something like that, suddenly it gets really easy to push you out, right? If those guys do it. I always think of it, what happens if he has a terrible, horrible camp? Well, he's probably still getting cut. And if he has an awesome camp, well, great, he gets the 3rd job. That's the ceiling, that's the floor. And then you think about, what if Logan Brown has an awesome camp and he makes the team? Pretty easy to see the confluence of those two events where, he can get beat out. But whatever it is, I think Justin School has sort of planted his flag. He's sort of dug in a foundational NFL career as a backup, right? If he does end up leaving Minnesota now or later, he gets to be a backup somewhere else, probably. He's now has enough of a resume where somebody's going to give him that chance for as long as he can play. But will it ever grow the way that it was supposed to? That is always the hypothetical question with these kinds of guys that have these injuries. And they're injuries that are more, you tear an ACL in your sophomore year of college. Okay, you got to do the rehab process. You got to come back, but your future is still secure. You still have, college eligibility, and that program's going to like you coming back. And even if they don't, you can transfer portal. You can do stuff about it. You can figure it out. In the NFL, teams will just move on and leave you in the dust. And suddenly you find yourself in a training camp where you're not making the team and your career can no longer grow. Will Justin School ever grow beyond the ability to be the third or fourth tackle on a depth chart? I don't know. I wouldn't bet on it, and it certainly won't happen here. But anyways, tomorrow is a schedule release episode. We're going to be live on that. If you do miss it, it'll all still be up in the same way on YouTube or on your favorite podcast feed the same way. So if you miss it, don't sweat it, but you're going to want to be live for that. I will see you all for that. And as always, Skull.